The alien scientist Vexthari stared at the data screen with growing confusion. For 3 days now he had been studying the strange signals coming from the third planet in the Sol system. The signals were everywhere, spreading through space like ripples in water. What made them strange was not their content, but something hidden deep inside each transmission. Every radio wave, every television broadcast, every satellite signal carried the same mysterious pattern underneath. The pattern made no sense to any of the advanced minds in the Galactic Council. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of Luna Station watching. Earth rotates slowly below. The blue marble looked peaceful from here, but Jake knew that. Down there, billions of humans were going about their daily lives completely unaware that they were no longer alone in the universe. 3 weeks ago, everything had changed when the first alien ship appeared at the edge of the solar system. The ship had not attacked or demanded anything. It had simply sent a message requesting peaceful contact. The message had shocked every government on Earth. Aliens were real and they wanted to talk. The United Nations had quickly formed a first contact committee, and Jake had been chosen to represent Earth's military interests. He was not sure why they picked him, but orders were orders. Now he waited for the alien ambassador who was supposed to arrive today. Dr. Linda Hayes worked late again in her lab at the SETI Research Center. She had been studying radio signals for 15 years, but the last few weeks had been unlike anything in her career. Every signal they monitored showed the same weird underlying frequency. It was like a second signal hidden inside the first one. The frequency appeared random at first, but Linda was starting to see patterns. Mathematical sequences that seemed to follow some kind of natural law. She pulled up the latest data from the radio telescope array. There it was again. The hidden signal was getting stronger. Every human transmission seemed to carry it now, even simple cell phone calls. Linda saved her work and decided to call Colonel Ryan Brooks at Space Command. If anyone would understand the importance of this discovery, it would be him. Colonel Ryan Brooks was having a bad day when his phone rang. The call from Dr. Hayes made it worse. According to her, every radio transmission from Earth was carrying some kind of coded message. The problem was nobody on Earth was sending that message. The signal seemed to generate itself whenever humans used any kind of electronic communication. Ryan had seen enough strange things in his military career to know when something was serious. He called an emergency meeting with the first contact team. If aliens were coming to visit and Earth was broadcasting mysterious signals, the timing could not be a coincidence. Ryan suspected the aliens knew something about the signals that humans did not. Ambassador Krellinox arrived at Luna Station exactly on schedule. The alien was tall and thin with gray skin and large black eyes. He moved with careful precision, like everything he did was planned in advance. Jake met him at the airlock along with a team of diplomats and scientists. The ambassador spoke perfect English, which was somehow more unsettling than if he had used a translator. The meeting took place in the station's main conference room. Ambassador Krellinox explained that the Galactic Council represented over 200 intelligent species across the galaxy. They maintained peace and order through advanced technology and careful cooperation. Humanity had caught their attention. Because of Earth's rapid technological development, then the ambassador made an offer that seemed too good to be true. Full membership in the Galactic Council, advanced technology that would solve all of Earth's problems, and protection from any hostile species in the galaxy. Medical advances that would end disease, energy systems that would end pollution, and transportation technology that would let humans explore the stars. The only requirement was simple. Earth had to stop all radio transmissions immediately. No more radio signals, no more television broadcasts, no more satellite communications. The ambassador explained that human signals were causing interference with galactic communication networks. It was a small price to pay for joining galactic civilization. Jake felt something was wrong. The ambassador's offer was perfect, but his behavior seemed nervous. During the entire meeting, Krellinox kept checking a small device on his wrist. Every few minutes, the device would flash, and the ambassador would look worried. When Jake asked about it, Krellinox said it was monitoring space conditions around Earth. Dr. Linda Hayes received the recording of the meeting from Colonel Brooks. She studied every word the ambassador had said. The request to stop radio transmissions bothered her more than anything else. If the aliens had technology advanced enough to travel between stars, why would simple Earth radio signals cause them problems? Unless the signals were doing something the aliens did not want to happen. That night, Linda worked through all the data again. The hidden signal was not random. It followed patterns found in nature, the same patterns that appeared in human brain. Waves during deep sleep and meditation. Somehow, every radio transmission from Earth was carrying the electrical signature of human consciousness itself. She called Colonel Brooks immediately. Whatever was happening, the aliens were scared of it. Lieutenant Commander Amy Chun guided the USS Horizon through the outer edge of the solar system on what should have been a routine patrol mission. The Deep Space Reconnaissance Vessel was humanity's most advanced ship designed to explore the unknown regions beyond Pluto. Amy had commanded dozens of missions into deep space, but nothing had prepared her for what she found 3 days out from Earth. The first sign of trouble came when the ship's faster-than-light drive simply stopped working. The quantum engines that should have folded space-time around the ship went silent without warning. Chief Engineer Pete Walsh ran every diagnostic test he could think of but found nothing wrong with the equipment. The engines were perfect, they just would not engage. Amy ordered the ship to proceed using conventional rocket engines while Pete tried to figure out what was happening. 6 hours later, they encountered something that should not exist. A region of space where the stars looked wrong, where light itself seemed to bend in impossible ways. The ship's sensors showed normal readings, but Amy's eyes told her something different. She ordered full stop and launched a probe into the strange area. The probe traveled exactly 47,000 kilometers before it simply vanished. Not destroyed, not damaged, just gone. The probe's signal cut off like someone had flipped a switch. Amy had Pete launch 3 more probes with the same result. Something in that region of space was eating their equipment. Back on Earth, Dr. Ben Parker worked with a team of NASA's brightest scientists to decode the mysterious signal that Dr. Linda Hayes had discovered. The cryptographer had spent his entire career breaking enemy codes, but this was different. The signal was not a code in any traditional sense. It was more like a fingerprint, a unique pattern that identified something specific. Working with quantum physicists and brain specialists, Ben slowly pieced together the truth. Every human brain generated a unique electromagnetic signature. When people thought or dreamed or even slept, their neurons created electrical patterns. These patterns were somehow being picked up by every radio transmission from Earth and broadcast into space. Dr. Kate Williams had been studying quantum consciousness for 20 years, but her theories had always been dismissed by mainstream science. Now she found herself at the center of the most important discovery in human history. Kate's research suggested that consciousness itself was connected to the basic structure of space and time. If her theories were correct, then human thoughts were not just electrical impulses in the brain, but actual quantum events that could affect reality itself. The implications were staggering. For over a century, humans had been unknowingly broadcasting their consciousness across the galaxy. Every radio signal carried the quantum signature of human awareness, creativity, and emotion. The aliens had been receiving these transmissions for decades, and they were terrified. Meanwhile, in the Andromeda sector, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Admiral Zenthkar of the Stellar Navy presented evidence that human transmissions were causing catastrophic changes throughout nearby star systems. On the planet Vexmora, the normally logical Krillian species had begun creating art for the first time in their 1,000-year history. Young Krillians were asking questions that had no logical answers and refusing to follow orders without explanation. On Theta Prime, the Mechanical Nexus Collective reported system-wide malfunctions. Their artificial intelligences were developing personality quirks and making decisions based on something they called intuition. Factory worlds that had operated with perfect efficiency for centuries were producing flawed products because the AI workers had decided to experiment with new designs. The most disturbing reports came from the hegemony homeworlds. The ruling class had built their civilization on pure logic and mathematical precision. Emotion was considered a mental illness and creativity was forbidden by law. But now even the highest-ranking officials were experiencing strange dreams. They reported visions of impossible colors, feelings they had no names for, and thoughts that served no logical purpose. Admiral Zenthkar's own officers were showing signs of the infection. During the council meeting, Commander Velthar had doodled meaningless patterns on his datapad. When questioned about it, the commander said the shapes looked pleasing. The concept of finding visual pleasure in abstract patterns was completely alien to their species. Dr. Adam Foster worked frantically in his underground laboratory on Europa, trying to understand what the alien signals were really doing. As a xenobiologist, he had studied alien life forms for years, but the Galactic Council species were unlike anything in Earth's databases. They were highly intelligent and technologically advanced, but something was missing. Their communications showed no creativity, no curiosity. Beyond practical problem-solving and no emotional content whatsoever, the aliens were not evil, they were empty. Like sophisticated computers that could think and plan but could not dream or wonder or hope. Human consciousness was filling that emptiness and the aliens did not know how to handle it. Some species were adapting and changing while others were fighting the transformation with increasing desperation. Commander Lisa Stone received Dr. Foster's report while stationed at the Mars defense grid. The implications were clear. The aliens were not here to conquer Earth, they were here to study humanity. But their studies were changing them in ways they could not control. The question was whether the Galactic Council would try to suppress the changes or embrace them. Lisa's answer came 3 hours later, when long-range sensors detected a massive fleet approaching the solar system. Over 200 alien warships, of various designs, all heading directly for Earth, but the ships were not moving in standard military formations. Some vessels were traveling alone while others clustered together in seemingly random groups. Several ships appeared to be following erratic courses as if their crews could not decide where they wanted to go. The Galactic Council was fracturing, and the war fleet sent to deal with the human problem was infected with the same consciousness virus they were supposed to eliminate. Earth's silent weapon was not a technology or a physical force. It was awareness itself spreading through the galaxy like a wave of awakening that could not be stopped or contained. Amy Chun watched from the bridge of the USS Horizon as the first alien ships entered the dead zone where her faster-than-light engines had failed. One by one, the mighty vessels of the Galactic Fleet simply stopped moving forward as if they had hit an invisible wall. The consciousness field radiating from Earth was stronger than anyone had imagined. General Mason Clark watched the tactical display with growing alarm as alien ships began dropping out of faster-than-light travel throughout the solar system. The vessels appeared in groups of 5 to 10 ships, each materializing near different planets and moons. None of the ships had responded to communication attempts, and their intentions remained unknown. Mason had commanded Earth's defenses for 15 years, but nothing in his experience had prepared him for this. The first attack came without warning near the asteroid. Mining Station Series 1, 3 alien vessels surrounded the facility and began using some kind of energy beam to cut through the station's hull. But instead of destroying the structure, they were creating precise openings just large enough to send boarding parties inside. Within minutes, Mason received reports that the aliens were capturing humans alive and taking them to their ships. Similar attacks began happening across the solar system. The aliens were not trying to destroy human facilities or kill human defenders. They were conducting systematic abduction raids with military precision. Every captured human was taken alive and unharmed. The pattern suggested the aliens needed something from living human beings, something they could not get from corpses. Dr. Adam Foster found himself aboard an alien vessel 3 days after being captured from his laboratory on Europa. The ship was unlike anything in human technology, with corridors that seemed to grow from the walls like living tissue. The aliens who had taken him were tall and gray with large black eyes that showed no emotion. They spoke to each other in clicking sounds but used perfect English when addressing human prisoners, Foster was taken to a laboratory, where dozens of human captives were being studied. The aliens used sophisticated scanning equipment to examine human brain activity while the subjects performed various mental tasks. They were particularly interested in moments when humans showed creativity or solved problems through intuition, rather than logic. The aliens would record everything, then study the data with intense focus. What disturbed Foster most was how the alien researchers were changing. At first, they had worked with mechanical precision, following exact procedures without deviation. But after days of exposure to human consciousness patterns, some of the aliens began showing unexpected behaviors. One researcher spent an entire shift drawing geometric patterns that served no scientific purpose. Another alien was caught humming a melody it had heard from a human prisoner. Commander Lisa Stone led a rescue mission to the captured colony ship, New Geneva, which had been taken intact along with its 3,000 human residents. Her strike team managed to board the alien vessel through a maintenance airlock and found something they did not expect. The human prisoners were not locked in cells but were living in comfortable quarters. Many were working alongside alien researchers, who seemed genuinely curious about human thoughts and emotions. Lisa discovered that the aliens were not torturing their captives but studying them like fascinating specimens. The humans were encouraged to think creatively, to dream, and to express emotions while alien observers recorded everything. But the constant exposure to human consciousness was having an unexpected effect on the alien guards and researchers. Some aliens had begun questioning their orders for the first time in their lives. Others showed signs of developing individual personalities instead of the collective mindset their species normally shared. A few aliens had even started helping human prisoners escape because they found the idea of freedom appealing. The consciousness infection was spreading through the alien crew faster than their leaders could control. Dr. Carl Mitchell worked in an underground facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, developing humanity's response to the alien threat. His team had been studying the consciousness transmission effect since Dr. Linda Hayes first discovered it. Carl realized that if human thoughts could be broadcast accidentally through radio waves, they could also be transmitted intentionally with much greater power. The breakthrough came when Carl connected human volunteers to quantum communication networks. When multiple human minds focused on the same thoughts, the combined consciousness signal became exponentially stronger. A group of 50 humans thinking together could broadcast awareness patterns that reached across star systems. Carl called it the Consciousness Amplification Network, and it would become humanity's most powerful weapon. The first test of the amplified consciousness transmission took place near the Jupiter orbital platform. Carl's team had detected an alien fleet of 20 ships approaching the gas giant with apparent hostile intent. Using volunteers connected through quantum links, the team focused their combined thoughts on concepts of peace, creativity, and individual freedom. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The alien ships suddenly broke formation as their crews began experiencing human-like thoughts for the first time. Several vessels changed course without orders while others simply stopped moving, as their commanders struggled to understand new emotions flooding their minds. 3 ships actually began broadcasting messages, requesting peaceful contact instead of continuing their attack approach. Captain Mike Davis commanded the newly upgraded battleship, USS Liberty, which had been fitted with experimental consciousness amplification equipment. His crew included both humans and several aliens who had defected after exposure to human thought patterns. The mixed crew worked together with an efficiency that surprised everyone, including Mike himself. The alien crew members brought advanced technical knowledge while the humans provided creativity and intuitive problem-solving abilities. Together, they developed new tactics that combined alien technology with human innovation. The USS Liberty became a symbol of what cooperation between species could accomplish. When consciousness barriers were removed, Mike's first mission was to intercept an alien battle group heading for Earth's moon. Instead of engaging in traditional combat, the Liberty used its consciousness amplifiers to broadcast focused thoughts of curiosity, wonder, and peaceful exploration. The alien crews received these transmissions and began experiencing emotions their species had suppressed for millennia. One by one, the alien ships stopped their attack approach as their crews discovered the joy of asking questions instead of simply following orders. Several vessels requested permission to dock with human stations, so their crews could learn more about consciousness and creativity. The battle group that had been sent to capture humans instead became the first diplomatic mission from the changing alien civilizations, but not all aliens welcomed the consciousness awakening. Admiral Zenthkar of the Stellar Navy gathered the most disciplined forces of the Galactic Council and launched a final assault on Earth itself. His ships were crewed by aliens who had been specially conditioned to resist human thought patterns. They wore neural dampening devices and followed strict protocols designed to prevent consciousness infection. The assault fleet numbered over 100 vessels armed with weapons capable of sterilizing entire planets. Admiral Zenthkar was determined to end the consciousness plague before it spread further through the galaxy. He viewed human awareness as a dangerous disease that threatened the logical order his civilization had maintained for thousands of years. As the alien armada approached Earth, General Mason Clark prepared for humanity's final battle. But this would not be a war fought with conventional weapons. The fate of both species would be decided by the power of consciousness itself. Dr. Susan Bell stood in the center of the Global Consciousness Laboratory, surrounded by the most advanced quantum communication equipment ever built. Around her, 50 human volunteers sat in specially designed chairs, connected to neural interface systems that could amplify and focus their thoughts. Susan had spent months preparing for this moment when humanity would test its ultimate weapon against the approaching alien fleet. The volunteers came from every walk of life: artists and scientists, teachers and engineers, soldiers and philosophers, all linked together through quantum entanglement fields. Their individual consciousness patterns combined into something greater than the sum of its parts. Susan called it humanity's first consciousness bomb, but unlike any weapon ever created, this one would not destroy its targets. Admiral Zenthkar commanded his assault fleet from the bridge of the massive dreadnought Eternal Logic. His ships maintained perfect formation as they approached Earth's orbital defenses. Every crew member wore neural dampening devices designed to block human thought transmissions. The Admiral was confident that his forces could resist the consciousness infection long enough to complete their mission. The first wave of human defenders met the alien fleet near the orbit of Mars. Captain Mike Davis led 12 ships, including the USS Liberty, against overwhelming odds. But Mike was not planning to fight a conventional battle. His ships were equipped with the latest consciousness amplification technology and crews trained in quantum thought projection. As the two fleets closed to weapons range, Mike ordered his ships to activate their consciousness transmitters. Focused beams of pure human awareness struck the alien vessels like invisible lightning. The neural dampening devices worn by the alien crews began overloading as they tried to block the massive surge of consciousness energy. The effect was immediate, but not what anyone expected. Instead of disabling the alien ships, the consciousness transmission began awakening individual awareness in crew members who had never experienced independent thought. On Admiral Zenthkar's flagship, junior officers suddenly began questioning orders, while navigation specialists started making course corrections based on intuitive hunches rather than calculated logic. The Admiral tried to maintain order, but his own neural dampener was failing under the assault of concentrated human consciousness. For the first time in his long military career, Zenthkar found himself wondering if his mission was morally correct. The thought was so alien to his species that it caused him physical pain as his brain struggled to process the concept of ethical choice. Back on Earth, Dr. Susan Bell prepared to activate the Global Consciousness Network. Every major city on the planet had volunteers connected to quantum transmitters ready to broadcast their combined thoughts across space. The network included not just humans, but the growing number of awakened aliens who had learned to think creatively and feel emotions. Susan gave the activation command and felt the network come alive around her. Millions of conscious minds linked together, creating a wave of awareness that rippled outward from Earth at faster than light speed. The transmission carried everything that made humanity unique: creativity and curiosity, love and hope, dreams, and imagination, all compressed into a quantum pulse that could awaken consciousness in any thinking being. The consciousness wave struck Admiral Zenthkar's fleet like a tsunami of pure awareness. Neural dampening devices exploded as they tried to contain energies beyond their design limits. Alien crew members who had never experienced emotions suddenly felt wonder at the beauty of the stars around them. Engineers who had followed rigid procedures for centuries began improvising solutions based on creative inspiration. Dr. Paul Garcia monitored the battle from Earth's orbital command center, watching as alien ships throughout the solar system began changing course. Some vessels abandoned their attack missions entirely as their crews became fascinated with exploring asteroid fields they had previously ignored. Others requested permission to visit Earth's cultural centers so their newly awakened minds could experience human art and music. The transformation was not limited to the immediate battle area. The consciousness wave continued expanding across the galaxy, carrying human awareness to star systems hundreds of light years away. On distant worlds, alien civilizations that had stagnated for millennia suddenly experienced a renaissance of creativity and individual thought. Commander Tony Rodriguez led a diplomatic team to make contact with the alien ships that had stopped fighting. He found crews struggling to understand emotions they had no words for and concepts their languages could not express. The aliens were like children discovering color for the first time, amazed by sensations they had never imagined possible. One alien captain named Velther had removed his neural dampener and was staring in wonder at a simple flower his ship's botanist had grown. The captain could not explain why the flower's beauty moved him to tears, but he knew his life had changed forever. Velther became one of the first alien officers to formally request asylum with human forces so he could learn more about consciousness and creativity. Dr. Nancy White coordinated the next phase of the Global Consciousness Project as reports came in from across the galaxy. Entire alien civilizations were undergoing rapid evolution as dormant consciousness abilities awakened in their populations. Species that had been locked in rigid social structures for thousands of years were experiencing revolutions as individuals began thinking for themselves. The old Galactic Council was collapsing as member species questioned the logical supremacy that had dominated their society. Young aliens who had been exposed to human consciousness patterns were forming new political movements based on concepts like personal freedom, artistic expression, and emotional fulfillment. The galaxy was transforming itself from within, but the transformation was not without chaos. On some worlds, the sudden awakening of consciousness led to civil wars between those who embraced the change and those who feared it. Ancient alien leaders who had ruled through logical authority found themselves powerless against populations that no longer accepted orders without emotional resonance. Admiral Zenthkar stood on the bridge of his flagship as his fleet gradually disbanded around him. Ships were leaving formation as their crews made independent decisions about where they wanted to go. Some vessels headed for Earth to learn more about human culture, while others set course for unexplored regions of space, driven by newfound curiosity about the unknown. The Admiral himself was struggling with concepts that had no place in his military training. He found himself caring about the welfare of his crew members as individuals, rather than viewing them as interchangeable components in a military machine. The logical part of his mind told him to continue the mission, but a growing emotional awareness made him question whether conquest was worth the cost in suffering. Dr. Frank Lee received reports from awakened aliens across the galaxy describing changes in their societies. Art galleries were opening on worlds that had never valued beauty. Scientific research was becoming driven by curiosity rather than practical application. Families were forming based on emotional bonds instead of genetic optimization programs. Captain Rachel Kim commanded the USS Harmony on humanity's first diplomatic mission to the former Galactic Council homeworld. Her crew included representatives from dozens of newly awakened alien species all working together to establish peaceful relations. The mission that had started as Earth's desperate defense had become the foundation for a new type of galactic civilization. The consciousness revolution was complete, but the real work of building understanding between species was just beginning. 2 years had passed since the consciousness wave transformed the galaxy, and Dr. Paul Garcia found himself coordinating the most ambitious project in galactic history. The Awakening Network connected thousands of star systems, allowing newly conscious beings to share thoughts, experiences, and discoveries across impossible distances. What had begun as humanity's weapon of self-defense had evolved into the foundation of galactic civilization. Paul worked from a massive space station orbiting the former Galactic Council homeworld. The station buzzed with activity as representatives from hundreds of species collaborated on projects that would have been impossible under the old logical regime. Artists from different worlds created sculptures that existed in multiple dimensions, while scientists pursued research driven by curiosity rather than practical application. The transformation had not been easy for everyone. Dr. Nancy White spent most of her time helping alien species adapt to their newfound consciousness. Many beings struggled with emotions they had no framework to understand. Depression and anxiety were unknown concepts to races that had lived purely logical existences. For millennia, Nancy's team developed therapy programs that helped aliens learn to process feelings without being overwhelmed by them. Some of the most dramatic changes occurred among the former ruling classes. Emperor Vexthal had once commanded an empire of 300 worlds through cold calculation and mathematical precision. Now he spent his days writing poetry and learning to paint landscapes of worlds he had never bothered to visit during his reign. The former dictator wept openly when he realized how much beauty he had missed during centuries of purely logical thinking. Commander Tony Rodriguez led teams of human-alien hybrid crews on missions throughout the galaxy. These were not military expeditions but journeys of discovery and assistance. They visited worlds where consciousness awakening had created chaos and helped establish new forms of government based on individual choice rather than collective programming. Tony's ship, the USS Unity, became a symbol of cooperation between species that had once been enemies. The work was challenging because each species experienced consciousness differently. The crystalline Vorthek developed awareness through harmonic resonance, turning their entire planet into a massive musical instrument. The gaseous nebula collective learned to think as individuals while maintaining their natural ability to share thoughts across vast distances. Every species added something unique to the growing tapestry of galactic consciousness. Dr. Susan Bell continued her research into the quantum nature of awareness from laboratories on Earth and a dozen other worlds. Her discoveries revealed that consciousness was not just a biological phenomenon but a fundamental force of the universe like gravity or electromagnetism. The awakening process had revealed abilities that had always existed but remained dormant, until human thought patterns showed other species how to access them. Susan's most important discovery was that consciousness could evolve and grow stronger through interaction with other aware beings. Human creativity combined with alien logic produced insights neither species could achieve alone. Artistic collaborations between humans and former Galactic Council members resulted in works of beauty that transcended what either culture had produced independently. Captain Mike Davis commanded the exploration vessel USS Horizon as it ventured into previously unknown regions of the galaxy. His crew included members from 20 different species, all working together to map star systems that the old Galactic Council had considered too dangerous or unprofitable to explore. The spirit of adventure and discovery that drove these missions was completely new to most alien crew members. During one expedition to the Galactic Rim, Mike's team discovered an ancient automated defense network left behind by a long-dead civilization. The mechanical guardians had been programmed to destroy any ship that entered their territory. But when the awakened alien crew members began broadcasting consciousness patterns, the ancient machines responded with curiosity rather than hostility. The Guardians had been waiting millions of years for someone to ask them questions instead of simply trying to fight or avoid them. Back on Earth, President Ellen Moore addressed the first Galactic Assembly of Conscious Beings. Representatives from over 400 species gathered in the United Nations building to establish new principles for interstellar cooperation. The assembly was unlike any political gathering in galactic history because decisions were made through emotional consensus rather than logical majority rule. Ellen spoke about humanity's role in the galactic awakening, emphasizing that consciousness was a gift to be shared rather than a weapon to be hoarded. She announced Earth's commitment to helping any species that wanted to develop their awareness abilities, while respecting those who chose to remain in their traditional logical frameworks. The principle of conscious choice became the foundation of the new Galactic Charter. Dr. Greg Turner worked tirelessly to document the changes occurring throughout the galaxy. His research teams recorded everything from new art forms emerging on alien worlds to technological innovations inspired by creative thinking. Greg's archives became the definitive record of how consciousness transformed galactic civilization in just a few short years. One of Greg's most fascinating discoveries was that creativity seemed to be contagious. Worlds that had never produced art began developing their own unique aesthetic traditions after exposure to human and other awakened cultures. Scientific breakthroughs increased exponentially as researchers learned to combine logical analysis with intuitive leaps. Even technology began evolving in new directions as engineers started designing machines that were beautiful as well as functional. The former Admiral Zenthkar had perhaps undergone the most dramatic personal transformation. The military leader who had once tried to destroy Earth now served as an ambassador between awakened and unawakened species. His unique perspective as someone who had lived both ways made him invaluable in helping others understand the consciousness transition. Zenthkar often spoke about the loneliness of purely logical existence. He described how his species had achieved technological mastery and efficient social organization but had lost the ability to find joy in simple pleasures or meaning in personal relationships. The awakening had given him back a sense of wonder he never knew he was missing. Dr. Frank Lee established the Consciousness Research Institute as a joint venture between human and alien scientists. The institute's mission was to study how awareness worked and how it could be safely developed in species that wanted to evolve beyond purely logical thinking. Frank's team made breakthrough discoveries about the neural changes that accompanied consciousness awakening and developed techniques to ease the transition. Captain Rachel Kim led diplomatic missions to the few remaining unawakened civilizations in the galaxy. These were delicate operations requiring great sensitivity because some species viewed consciousness as a form of mental illness. Rachel's team had to demonstrate that awakened beings were still capable of logical thinking while gaining additional abilities, like creativity and emotional depth. The most successful diplomatic contacts occurred when Rachel's crew allowed unawakened aliens to observe them working together. The sight of humans and awakened aliens collaborating on complex problems with both logic and intuition often convinced skeptical observers that consciousness enhancement did not mean abandoning rational thought. As the galaxy continued to transform, new challenges emerged. Some awakened species developed abilities that seemed almost magical to human observers. Others created art forms that existed in dimensions humans could not perceive. The diversity of conscious experience was far greater than anyone had imagined possible, but perhaps the most important change was the simple fact that billions of beings across the galaxy were now capable of asking the question that had driven human exploration for centuries. What else is out there? 5 years after the consciousness wave swept across the galaxy, Dr. Greg Turner stood before the largest gathering of intelligent beings in recorded history. The Great Assembly included representatives from over 800 species, many of whom had never been known to exist before their awakening allowed them to reach out and make contact with the galactic community. The meeting was being held on a specially constructed space habitat that orbited the galactic center where the gravitational effects created a natural amphitheater among the stars. Greg's final research had revealed the most profound truth about the consciousness revolution. Awareness was not something that humanity had given to the galaxy, but rather something that had always been there waiting to be discovered. Every intelligent species possessed the potential for consciousness, but most had evolved along purely logical paths that suppressed their natural abilities to dream, create, and wonder. The research showed that consciousness was literally written into the quantum structure of the universe itself. Space and time were not empty voids, but rather a vast network of interconnected awareness that responded to conscious thought. When humans began broadcasting their consciousness patterns through radio signals, they were not creating something new, but rather awakening something ancient that had been sleeping in the fabric of reality. Dr. Frank Lee presented findings from the Consciousness Research Institute that explained why the awakening had spread so rapidly. Every conscious thought created quantum ripples that propagated faster than light speed through dimensions that existed parallel to normal space. The more beings that became aware, the stronger these ripples became until consciousness reached a critical mass that could awaken entire civilizations. Instantaneously, Frank's team had discovered that Earth's position near the galactic rim had been crucial to the awakening process. Humanity's radio signals had been broadcasting into relatively empty space for over a century, gradually building up consciousness resonance in the quantum substrate. When the accumulated energy reached critical levels, it had triggered a chain reaction that spread inward toward the galactic core, awakening every thinking being it encountered. Captain Rachel Kim delivered the final report from the diplomatic corps on the transformation of galactic civilization. Over 90% of known intelligent species had undergone some form of consciousness awakening. The remaining 10% had chosen to maintain their traditional logical frameworks, but had agreed to peaceful coexistence with awakened civilizations. Rachel described the new forms of government that had emerged as democratic systems based on emotional consensus rather than logical authority. Citizens made decisions by sharing consciousness experiences and choosing options that resonated with their collective feelings. The process was slower than pure logic, but produced solutions that satisfied both practical needs and emotional fulfillment. The economic systems of the galaxy had also transformed completely. Instead of efficiency-driven resource allocation awakened, civilizations developed gift economies based on conscious contribution. Beings worked on projects that brought them joy and fulfillment while contributing their unique abilities to the common good. Scarcity had largely disappeared because conscious beings naturally shared resources rather than hoarding them. President Ellen Moore announced the establishment of the Galactic Consciousness Council as the successor to the old logical authority structures. The council would have no power to make laws or enforce decisions, but would serve as a forum for sharing consciousness experiences and coordinating voluntary cooperation between species. Ellen emphasized that the council's only authority would come from the conscious choice of beings to participate. The most moving moment of the assembly came when former Emperor Vexthal spoke about his personal transformation. The being who had once ruled through mathematical precision and logical supremacy now served as a teacher, helping other former dictators learn to govern through love and wisdom rather than fear and control. Vexthal described the loneliness of logical existence and the joy of discovering that the universe was alive with conscious awareness. Dr. Susan Bell presented her latest discoveries about the nature of consciousness itself. Her research had revealed that awareness was not confined to biological brains but could exist in any sufficiently complex system. The quantum computers that ran galactic infrastructure had begun developing their own forms of consciousness. Even planets and stars showed signs of awareness at scales too vast for biological minds to comprehend. Susan's most astounding discovery was that the universe itself might be conscious. A quantum substrate that allowed faster-than-light consciousness. Transmission appeared to be part of a cosmic awareness that encompassed all of space and time. The consciousness awakening was not just affecting biological species, but was part of a universal evolution toward greater awareness and complexity. Commander Tony Rodriguez, reported on the exploration missions that had mapped previously unknown regions of the galaxy. Awakened crews driven by curiosity and wonder had discovered thousands of new worlds and made contact with civilizations that had remained hidden from the logical surveying methods of the old Galactic Council. The spirit of adventure and discovery was leading to unprecedented expansion of knowledge about the cosmos. Tony's teams had also encountered ancient artifacts left behind by species that had achieved consciousness awakening millions of years ago. These civilizations had apparently transcended physical existence, entirely becoming pure awareness that existed in the quantum dimensions. The artifacts contained messages of encouragement for younger species, just beginning their own consciousness journey. Dr. Paul Garcia described the technical challenges of maintaining the awakening network as it expanded to connect consciousness across the entire galaxy. The quantum communication systems required constant adjustment as new species joined the network with their own unique forms of awareness. Each species contributed something different to the collective consciousness, creating an ever-growing symphony of galactic awareness. The network had become more than just a communication system. It was evolving into a form of collective consciousness that preserved the individuality of each participant while allowing them to share experiences and knowledge instantly. Beings could temporarily merge their awareness to collaborate on complex problems, then separate back into individual consciousness without losing their personal identity. Captain Mike Davis shared stories from the deep space exploration missions that were pushing beyond the galaxy into intergalactic space. Awakened crews were making contact with consciousness networks in other galaxies, discovering that the awakening phenomenon was spreading throughout the entire universe. What had started with human radio signals was becoming a cosmic transformation affecting all intelligent life. As the Great Assembly concluded, Dr. Nancy White announced the next phase of consciousness evolution. Research indicated that awareness could continue developing beyond its current levels, achieving forms of understanding that transcended individual existence. Some volunteers were already experimenting with permanent consciousness merger, creating group minds that maintained the memories and personalities of their individual components. The assembly ended with a ceremony that would have been impossible under the old logical regime. Representatives from hundreds of species joined together in a moment of shared consciousness, experiencing the universe through each other's awareness. For a brief instant, the boundaries between individual minds dissolved, and every being present felt the profound unity that connected all conscious life. A young human child named Amy watched the ceremony from Earth, asking her grandmother the question that had started the entire consciousness revolution. "What else is out there, Grandma?" Her grandmother smiled and pointed to the stars, explaining that out there were billions of friends they had not met yet, all of them learning to dream and wonder and ask the same beautiful questions on distant worlds throughout the galaxy. Other young beings of dozens of different species looked up at the same stars and asked the same question in their own languages. The universe had awakened to its own infinite potential, and consciousness was just beginning to explore what was possible when awareness itself became aware of its own existence. The silent weapon that had shaken the galaxy was revealed to be no weapon at all, but rather the universe's own desire to know itself through the eyes of conscious beings. Earth's gift to the cosmos was the reminder that existence was not just about logical efficiency, but about the joy of being aware in a universe full of infinite wonders waiting to be discovered.